listening to The Life Manual with your hosts Tom Payani and Emma Bradford, a practical guide giving you tips and tools to enjoy a happy, fulfilled and successful life.
Welcome to The Life Manual with me, Tom Payani and Emma Bradford. How you doing today, Emma? You alright?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good, yeah. Sun is shining, can't complain.
It's nice.
Sitting here with you. What more could I want in life?
It's good.
Alright. Such a brown nose, aren't I? That was a bit too much, yeah. Alright. Today we're going to talk about representational systems, aren't we?
Yeah, so this is something that we talk quite a lot about in NLP, and I mean, first of all, yeah, we need to discuss like what are representational systems, because for most people that might not mean anything. So, I mean, yeah, representational systems basically is the preferred way we like to filter and process information and experience life. Because we have all these different senses. We can see things, we can hear things, we can feel things, we can smell things, taste things. But there are these, quite often people have one or two preferred ways of filtering their life experience. So some people could be very visual, some people be very in touch with what they hear. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, I mean, so the main representational systems, you've got visual, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's people who filter information visually, surprisingly.
Yes.
Yeah? But there's different characteristics to someone who has a dominant visual representation system, isn't there?
Yeah, there are many different characteristics.
And of course, it's not one size fits all. You know, it's not if you're a visual person, then you do everything a visual person does all the time. It doesn't work like that. We're influenced by other representational systems as well. But often we have one dominant one, don't we? Yeah,
one or two that are slightly more dominant, and it's like you said, it can also vary according to situations as well. So if we're in certain situations, we might, in that particular situation, we might be more visual compared to another situation. That can happen too. However, generally speaking, someone who's more visual, generally speaking, they could display some of these characteristics that we're about to say.
Yeah, I mean, so as a starting point, as a generalization, there are some things that certain people from certain representational systems do. And again, this isn't always 100%, true all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But, for example, visual people, just some quick characteristics that generalize them, usually stand or sit more upright.
Mm-hmm.
They're not so good at memorizing verbal instructions because they visualize everything.
Yeah.
Often neat and tidy and well groomed. I mean,
is that true?
Well, yeah. I mean, this is by the definition, isn't it? And then obviously we're going to go into this later, but certain eye movements, we'll talk about that later. But these differentiate the representation systems as well.
Yeah, and also in terms of the breath, I mean, they can be very quick talking, very fast paced, very like breathing more in the upper chest. When they're talking and communicating with other people. So, that can be an indication as well.
Yeah.
And something else that we wanted to mention is also noticing the vocabulary.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most important way, in my opinion, where you can see the difference, isn't it? And the most useful way in terms of practical application of why it's useful to know what your representational system is.
It's a very quick way to identify, like, what our own preferred representational system is, like how we're noticing how we're communicating to others, and also noticing what the preferred system is of other people too.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to sort of dig into, I think, a bit the deepest, aren't we? The vocabulary.
Yeah.
And then you've got auditory people. I mean, the definitions of auditory people, they tend to talk to themselves. Okay, I could be an auditory person. Yeah, I think so. Easily distracted by noise, so more sensitive to background noise, or maybe find at night time, they're easily woken up, things like this.
Yeah, and I often, I've often said in my workshops and the meetups I do, that I always know the the members and the participants that are more auditory compared to the others, because they're the ones that want to find the quiet corner to practice the exercises. They're the ones that are easily distracted by everything that's going on around them in terms of the noise. Yeah.
And then you got kinesthetic people, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and this is kinesthetic means more sensitive to, feel and touch and these sorts of sensory.
And they're very in touch with their gut feeling. Their gut feeling or their intuition, whatever you want to call it. So they're very in tune with that and how things feel for them. That's so important.
Yeah, and understanding something by doing it. That's a key for them, isn't it? Not just with a kinesthetic person, it's not as useful to just tell them how to do something. They want to physically go through the process and do it themselves.
Yes, absolutely.
And there's a fourth one, isn't there?
There's a fourth one, because sometimes people forget about this fourth one, but I often talk about it and teach about this fourth one because I'm also this fourth one as well. It's so auditory digital. So it's when people have a very strong internal dialogue. So they really want to understand the how and the why and make sense of things. And this representational system for me has actually been really, really useful in the job that I do. This is the side of me that drives the desire to really understand what's going on with clients and really understand, okay, where's the root cause? Like, what's going on here? Let's make sense of this. So people who are very auditory digital, they can display characteristics from the other representational systems. Generally speaking, they tend to take a little bit longer to reply or to make sense of something, because they need to run through it first within to make sense of it, and then they can respond, then they make their decision.
Okay. I just want to just put out a couple of questions to the listeners there, just to help them know or understand maybe what representational system they are.
Yes.
Just to give them an idea. There's lots of questions you can ask yourself. We don't have time to do many, but I think a couple of questions, just depending on your answer, I can tell what representational system you've got.
Yeah.
So, for example, a good question is, when you have a problem, do you A, look for alternative ways of seeing it, B, talk about it with someone, or C, grapple with it and toss it around in your mind? And the vocabulary is very important here.
Yeah, so the listeners might notice that the specific words that were being used in those three responses were tied in with whether someone's very visual or very connected with sounds or very in touch with how things feel. Yeah. So the first one...
I look for alternative ways of seeing it.
Yeah, that's very visual. So looking and seeing. Yeah.
I talk about it with someone.
Yeah, so that's auditory. That's tuning into how things sound and hear.
And then C was, I grapple with it and toss it around in my mind. Kinesthetic.
Kinesthetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, depending on what was the immediate answer that you felt most connected with, that's an indicator of what your representational system is. All right. It's pretty self-explanatory. For example, let's say when someone is trying to convince you of something, what works best? A would be seeing evidence or proof. Means you're a visual learner. B, what they have to say about it or the reading material, auditory. C, go with your intuition or gut feeling. This is what you mentioned earlier. It's more of a kinesthetic trait, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, it's basically, how do you react to situations? What influences you most in the way people communicate with you? Does it have a leaning towards, imagery, visuals? Does it have a leaning towards sounds? Does it have a leaning towards, intuition or having to physically do something? This will give you an idea of what sort of learner you are. Yeah. And then, as you mentioned earlier, the key to this and the most important aspect of it, which I think can help you in a practical sense in everyday life, which is what we want to talk about mainly today, is the vocabulary associated with these representational systems.
Yes, it's noticing the words that we use. So that can give us an indication what preferred system we have. And then it can also help us improve relationships, and whether that's personal or professional in the workplace. Because if we're communicating with someone who's very visual, like for example, if our boss is very, very visual and we go along with a new project and we want to pitch a new idea to the boss and we go in talking about it like, oh, I have this gut feeling, and talking all about the feelings, the boss who's very visual, they might not get the whole idea, like what's going on here. So you need to go in with some diagrams, some images, some flowcharts, something visual to present that idea.
Play to someone's representational system.
Yeah, talk their language.
Yeah, and as you said, there's so many ways that using this knowledge can help. You know, with if I work with like sales teams, you know, going businesses and stuff like that, you know, understanding what your client will lean towards. You know, and using specific vocabulary and language to connect to them, to build rapport with them. And like anything, you know, like anything with NLP and psychology, it can be used for like good or evil. You know, it's like Jedi powers, isn't it? You know, of course it can be, you know, you can talk about, oh, but is it manipulation and stuff like that? But it's how you use it.
Exactly. I mean, there's a wonderful phrase that I read once. It's like they said, you can use a hammer to destroy things or construct things. Yeah. And it's the intention that's important.
Exactly.
And
this is just a tool.
Here we're talking about using these with good intentions and to really create better connections with people and to help everyone feel good.
Yeah, I mean, when I speak to sales teams, you know, the whole point is you want to target a client who the product or the service will be of value to. You know, if it's not of value to them in the first place, everyone's time's wasted.
Exactly.
But if the product or the service is of value to them, then this can just build rapport quicker. It can just help them understand maybe the product or the service, or you know, yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is applicable to all areas like relationships as well. Like if you know that you're with a partner who's very visual, then notice like how you're communicating with your partner about that. Like if you're giving them options and ideas about a holiday that you want to go on, then perhaps send them pictures rather than a whole long list of description and words that they need to read.
Yeah.
Is using this to kind of make life a little bit easier. Exactly.
It's just a tool to help. I mean, for example, you know, you have a friend who says, you know, Sarah doesn't listen to me. You know, this sounds a very obvious, straightforward sentence, but this is pretty clear that someone's, you know, and their auditory representational system is at the very least important to them. You know, because you could have someone else who says, yeah, my future looks hazy. Well, then you've got an indication that person has a strong visual representational system. So, you know, it doesn't have to be complicated, you know, complex grammatical structures. You know, it's just it's basic things like this that can give you an idea of, at least in that moment, how the person's thinking.
Yeah, like, I mean, there's many different examples. So, like, someone who's visual, they might say, yeah, I see the bigger picture. Someone who's very auditory, they might say, that sounds good.
Exactly.
Someone who's very kinesthetic, they're like, yeah, that feels right.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's many different...
And these are just great indicators. And, you know, I think the important thing is here is it can help you build rapport with someone. And it can help you, as you said, also maybe resolve conflict.
Yeah. Exactly.
This is another use of it.
Yeah, because conflict is just like there's something miscommunication. Something's going on there, so you want to create more connection and improve the communication, make it a little bit smoother. Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, in terms of these representational systems and how we can use them to our benefit, as well as if we're learning something, if we're studying for something, if there's something we need to learn in the workplace, or whether there's a particular qualification, or whether we're at school or university, whatever we're doing, and we're learning something, if you know what preferred representational system you have, then it can be very useful, because if you know that you're visual, then you can start bringing in more images and pictures and diagrams and flowcharts and things that can help you visualize what you need to learn. Or even watching videos as well can be really useful. if someone is very connected to sounds, so they're very auditory, then listening to audios, so like podcasts and audiobooks and talking things through with people as well can really help. Or recording, like if they have some notes that they need to learn, then recording it as well, like recording the audio, you talking it through on your phone and then listening to the audio back as well.
Yeah, and if you're not sure what your representational system is, then you just try different things, don't you, and see what works for you.
I mean, that's the thing about NLP, like having that flexibility and that curious mindset and trying different things. It's really like playing with it, having fun with it, exploring and noticing, oh yeah, I can learn a little bit more about myself and the world and other people is something great.
It's also worth mentioning as well that it's not, you don't have to, if you realise you're a visual learner, then it's not necessarily the best thing to only, you know, study something in a visual context and, you know, never read again, you know, and never, you know,
yeah,
it doesn't,
that's it, I'm done with books.
Yeah, you know, it doesn't quite work in that way, you know, like it's important to still have that balance, right?
Yes.
And like, you know, also, for example, humans as a species have general characteristics as well. And what I'm getting at here is, for example, with memory, you know, so even if you're an auditory learner, maybe for sure, memorizing something, the best way isn't just to write it down. The best way isn't just to write it down. You know, there's these, I don't know if you've heard of these concepts called like memory palaces and things like this. You know, we can probably quickly talk about it, but basically, let's say I want to remember, you know, I don't know, I'm going a bit old school here, but like Henry VIII's wives, you know, something like that, you know, where you have to just memorize a certain sequence of people or events or whatever, you know, and instead of just writing down the names of his wives, you know, you can create something called a memory palace, but there's lots of variations on this.
Yeah, and creating stories and lots of things can help. Yeah,
but basically it's, so you pick your house, or it can be a building that you're very familiar with, and then go into a room of that house and you visualize, you know, for, I don't know, Anne Boleyn is the one you're on, and so it doesn't matter how stupid or silly the visualization is. Actually, the stranger the better. And it, you know, so all right, well, because of my my chavvy accent, Anne Boleyn, that's how I say it. So all right, Berlin. So I've got a picture of this like old queen-looking woman, you know, partying in Berlin. I don't know, you know, it doesn't matter. The point is, that's a visual reference now that I'm not going to forget.
Yeah.
And if I put these this sequence in the correct order, so you know, first I go to my, you know, bed, and then I go to my you know, wardrobe, and then I know the direction I'm walking around the room in. I will remember this information 1,000,000 times more effectively than if I just wrote a list of these women down.
Exactly.
So it's not about whether I'm a visual or auditory learner. The brain works better remembering visuals and imagery.
There's so many different tools and techniques, and like what we're doing is we're just giving some insights into different things.
If you're interested in stuff like that, Google memory palaces. This is something quite interesting to get into, the neuroscience behind it all as well.
And it really helps with like learning names, like when we're meeting people in social situations, because that's something that a lot of people come to me and say like, oh, I just always forget people's names. What do I do? And I mean, there are many different techniques that we can use, but things like this can help. And either knowing your representational systems or using something like memory palace can really help us.
Yeah, learning a language is very useful for as well, vocabulary. You know, so instead of just writing down the word in English and then Spanish, for example, you write down the word in English and Spanish, and then you draw some sort of picture that represents that piece of vocabulary for you.
Yes.
And you'll remember it better.
Yeah. And if someone who's very, very in touch with how things feel, like that gut feeling, then doing something practical, like walking it through, like actually doing some role play or something like that can really help.
Good example of this is, for example, got a friend who's very kinesthetic, whether they realise it or not. You know, that's their lead representational system. So what they did is they were struggling with Spanish vocabulary when they first moved to Barcelona. So they just got lots of little mini post-it notes, and wrote the name in Spanish on the post-it notes and physically put it on the object.
Great.
In the kitchen, or you know, in the living room or in the bathroom or whatever. Must have been a bit annoying for the flatmate, but you know, that's an example of you know, playing to your lead representational system and working with it.
Yeah, and also like practicing it and doing, like, I know for me, like, learning the language really helped to actually just to get out there and practice and talk with people, because I know that if I was looking at, I mean, some images helped me, but not so much. Like for me, like, it was tapping into that kinesthetic aspect and really kind of just getting into conversations with people and kind of like going to yoga classes but doing it in Spanish, and then having that kinesthetic aspect. That's
really useful. Especially, I know we're focusing on learning a language now, but that's super useful, because you're doing, instead of, you know, reading a grammar book, you know, where maybe you're not motivated, you know, reading a normal Spanish, for example, you know, book or newspaper or magazine on a subject that already interests you. So rather than saying, okay, we're going to speak in Spanish now for 10 minutes and we're just sitting here trying to think of Spanish small talk or whatever, you're going to a yoga class where you're doing something you enjoy in any language.
Yes.
And it's in Spanish. This just compounds the effectiveness of the process.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah, finding ways to make it more fun. Like,
it's just helping yourself, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, this is really like just useful insights into how people can use this in their day-to-day life and just be a little bit more curious about themselves and other people, and notice, I wonder what's my preferred way of filtering through information.
I think the conclusion is just experiment, isn't it?
Yes.
Try different things and see what works for you, because everyone is different in regards to this.
And have fun with it, like play around with it. And there's one thing that I often do in workshops is when we're talking about this, that we start a story. So we go around in a group, and so you can make up a story about anything. Like one of the popular ones is to make up a story about Sammy the squirrel. So one person starts and you first go through all the different representational systems. So first you'll say, okay, in this round, we'll talk about the visual aspects. So each person adds on a sentence. So they say, Sammy the squirrel looked up and saw a yellow sunshine, and like talking about all the visual aspects. And then you go around the group and everyone adds a line to the story. And once everyone has said their part, then you move on to the auditory. So then you say, okay, Sammy the squirrel heard a loud crash and a rustle in the leaves behind him, or something like that. And then you do that round, and then you go into the kinesthetic aspect as well. And then you can always add in the auditory digital, which would be something very logical, straight to the point, and he did X, Y, Z.
Yeah, auditory digital is often used in more formal, like business context, meetings, presentations, things like this.
Leaving out all of the colourful aspects of the language. It's very kind of straight to the point and logical and step by step. And by doing that exercise, and it can be a lot of fun. This can be something you can do at a dinner party and with your friends, just kind of playing around with this story. And then afterwards you can discuss, okay, which round did you find easier? Which round did you find harder? Like, were there particular aspects? Like for some people, they might find the auditory round, like talking about things in terms of the sounds, very difficult. For other people, it might be really easy. And that can be an insight as well into what preferred system they have. So it can be really good fun to do that.
Okay. Emma, we've run out of time again.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, hopefully that's useful. Understanding representational systems, understanding what your own is, and understanding how you can use it to maintain, build relationships, rapport, you know, whether it's in relationships, you know, with your partner, whether it's in business, if you're a manager, if you're in a sales team, you have to talk to clients, you know, in all these different contexts, it can be useful for you. Yeah. Brilliant. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you very much.
And I will see you very soon.
Yes.
Take care.
Bye.
Human listening to the Life Manual podcast with your hosts, Tom Payani and Emma Bradford. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share the link with your friends and family, helping us to spread these practical tools to more people in the world.